Okay, so can you really feel the human body with invisible waves? I mean, from things like bioresonance to these so-called Rife machines, this whole world of frequency therapy is just packed with some pretty wild claims. The idea is that you can tune our bodies, almost like an instrument, to fight everything from allergies to even cancer. But what's the real science behind it all? To figure that out, we've got to separate what's plausible from what might just be a placebo. Let's get into it.
So here's our roadmap. First, we'll get into the core idea of our body electric. Then we'll look at the actual therapies, how they tune the system. After that, we'll dive into the clinical picture, try to walk that fine line between science and pseudoscience, and then we'll wrap it all up with the final frequency, what you should really take away from all this.
All right, before we can even begin to talk about healing with frequencies, we have to understand the one concept that all of this is built on, and that is the idea that our bodies aren't just biological, they're also fundamentally electric.
So, according to some theories in biophysics, our bodies are way more than just flesh and bone. There's this one model that suggests our cells can actually be seen as this huge semiconductor network. Yeah, kind of like a computer chip. The idea is that this network is just constantly moving electrical current, charge, and information all throughout our system.
Now, if the body really is an electrical system, then the key to influencing it comes down to a principle from physics called resonance. This is the idea that pretty much everything, every organ, every cell, heck, even every virus, has a specific frequency that it just naturally wants to vibrate at.
The classic example that makes this super easy to understand is an opera singer shattering a wine glass. You've probably seen this, right? Well, it's not the loudness of her voice that breaks the glass, it's the pitch. She finds that one single perfect note that matches the glass's unique resonant frequency. And by holding it, she makes the glass vibrate so intensely that it just shatters. Frequency therapies claim they can do something similar, but to selectively target things like bacteria or specific tissues right inside your body.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this actually translate into practice? Let's take a look at the actual therapies that claim they can tune the human body. You've basically got three main players in this game. First up is bioresonance. You can think of this as like a diagnostic and tuning tool. It claims it can find imbalanced frequencies in your body and then send back corrected ones. Then there are Rife machines, which are a bit more aggressive. They claim to actively destroy things like bacteria or tumors with their specific frequencies. And finally, you have PEMF therapy, which uses magnetic fields to try and encourage the body's own healing process, like reducing inflammation. But, claims are one thing, and clinical evidence is a whole other ballgame. So to see what the actual science has to say, we're going to do a deep dive into a really rigorous study on one of the most researched methods, PEMF therapy.
Yeah, so a pretty recent study from 2023 gives us a fantastic example. It was a single-blind, randomized controlled trial, which is basically one of the highest standards in medical research, and it was looking at whether PEMF could actually help patients with moderate to severe osteoarthritis in their knees.
So here's how they set it up. They took 60 patients and randomly split them into two groups. The intervention group, they got the real PEMF therapy. The control group, though, they got a sham treatment, a machine that looked and sounded the same, but actually did nothing. And this part is so important. Both groups also got the standard treatment of medication and exercise. That way, the only real difference between them was the PEMF.
And the results? Honestly, they were dramatic. Just look at this. Both groups started with really severe pain, right? We're talking like a 9 out of 10. Now, after 3 months, the control group, the one with the fake machine, their pain barely budged. But the PEMF group, whoa, their average pain score absolutely plummeted, from over a 9 down to just 2.6. I mean, that is a massive, clinically significant difference.
So what did the researchers themselves say? Well, their conclusion was pretty direct and powerful. They found that PEMF significantly improved both pain and physical function, and, get this, with no reported side effects. So this is a really key piece of evidence that suggests that for at least one condition, a specific type of frequency therapy can have real, measurable benefits.
But, and this is a really big but, not all frequency therapies have this kind of solid clinical backing, not even close. So let's broaden our view and look at the other end of the spectrum, where that line between science and pseudoscience gets, well, it gets really blurry.
And this brings us to the Rife machine.
It was invented way back in the 1920s with the incredible claim that it could literally shatter cancer cells. It was, not surprisingly, very quickly condemned by the medical establishment. After decades of just being forgotten, it suddenly popped back up in the 90s, marketed as an alternative cancer cure, which ended up with a whole bunch of its promoters getting convicted of fraud. Today, the official stance from the medical community is crystal clear. The FDA has not approved the Rife machine for anything. The American Cancer Society actually debunked its core claim, saying the waves are way too weak to destroy bacteria. And major health authorities like WebMD issue a very serious warning. Choosing this device instead of proven cancer treatments can be incredibly dangerous to your health. So this just begs the question, right? If the scientific evidence isn't there for some of these things, why do some people swear by them? Why do they report feeling so much better? And this leads us to one of the most powerful and, honestly, mysterious forces in all of medicine.
It's called the placebo effect, and this one Reddit user just put it perfectly. The improvement you feel can be totally real, but it might be driven by your belief in the treatment, not the treatment itself. Now, this doesn't mean the relief is fake. Your feeling of getting better is absolutely genuine. It just means the reason for it might be psychological, not technological.
So after going through the theory, the evidence, and all the controversies, let's try to boil this all down into some clear final takeaways.
So what's the bottom line here? First, just remember that frequency therapy isn't one thing. It's a huge spectrum. You've got promising clinical applications like PEMF for osteoarthritis on one end, and then completely debunked devices like the Rife machine on the other. Second, never ever underestimate the power of the placebo effect. And finally, and this is really the most important thing, always talk to a doctor or a healthcare professional before you start any new kind of treatment.
And that leaves us with one last crucial question. In our constant search for healing, where do we draw the line between a promising new scientific frontier and just simple wishful thinking? You know, the answer isn't found in personal stories or really compelling marketing claims. As we've seen today, that line is drawn by one thing and one thing only: rigorous, repeatable, and transparent evidence.